High. Temperature 150.
I'm Finch, a post-apocalyptic survivor. 10 years ago, a solar flare destroyed the ecology of the Earth, and under the scorching sun, civilization was destroyed. I survived alone in the ruins with a protective suit, a loyal dog named Goodyear, and the reconnaissance robot Dewey that I personally created. In order to prevent Goodyear from living alone after my death, I used all my knowledge to create a brand new robot, Jeff, a successor who can accompany, perceive, and protect. He is naive and clumsy, but he is growing little by little. When the storm warning sounded, I knew we had to leave. The only hope was San Francisco. Maybe there was still human warmth there. So I took Jeff, Dewey, and Goodell on an unknown journey. The storm came one after another, as if the sky was about to swallow us and our car in one bite. Jeff and I quickly took action, pulled out the cables, and fixed every corner of the housing car. The roar of the storm was like an army rushing out of hell, carrying gravel and dust to beat the car body. The cables were pulled tightly like strings, and the air was filled with the sound of metal. The last crucial buckle was completed by Jeff. He didn't wait for my instructions, but took the initiative to fix it and even checked the tension of each cable. I stood by the door, watching him pick up the heavy metal nail with his back to me, kneel down in the wind, and finalize it. I suddenly had an illusion that he was not just a shell pieced together by a program. He was like a reliable partner, like a living person. After the storm passed, we found that one side of the tire had burst. I searched through the toolbox, but found that the jack was long gone. I was about to look for an alternative solution, but Jeff walked over without saying a word, bent over slightly, and then lifted the car with his bare hands. Yes, just like that, the creaking metal lifted off the ground under his palm. I changed the spare tire while watching him silently prop up the car, and suddenly felt a bit sour. I never thought that I would survive in this dilapidated doomsday relying on a robot I created with my own hands. He is also changing, showing more and more curiosity and exploration as a human. He tried to talk to Goodell, imitate dog barking, and analyze the frequency of his tail wagging. Jeff told me that he was learning dog language.
I thought our communication might improve if I learned to talk dog.
I smiled, but only lightly. I knew that Goodell would not easily trust anyone other than humans, even Jeff. That would take time to change, but I know that trust is built slowly. When he asked me what trust meant, I told him a story from the past. I once solved a critical software problem alone at work, but I gave credit to the entire team because I knew it was the best way to build trust. One day, we parked at a restaurant and I suddenly vomited blood. Realizing that I really didn't have much time left, I took Goodyear inside to play with him. Jeff was playing with his RV while listening to music and accidentally released the handbrake and hit another car. I scolded him and told him that his only mission was to take care of Goodell. He lowered his head and remained silent. The air seemed to freeze for a few seconds. I know I'm being harsh, but I'm really scared. I'm afraid that when I die, he will just be a work in progress, a child who hasn't had time to grow up. So I started teaching him how to drive. At first, he couldn't even grip the steering wheel steadily, and either stepped on the brake too lightly or kicked all the way down. But he learned quickly, maybe because he knew about my illness, or maybe because he really cared about Goodyear's future. I was actually relieved in my heart. That night, we camped in the wilderness. Above our heads was the sky without any city light pollution. The stars were like polished silver scattered in the night sky. Then we saw the aurora, a rare and eerie purple-green light band dancing in the sky, as if making a final farewell performance in the end of the world. If daylight is so dangerous, why don't you drive at night? Jeff asked, because I have to hide from people at night. I looked into the distance. Hungry people hiding in the shadows, people with ulterior motives. Jeff seemed to understand, but he didn't seem to understand. He just lowered his head and didn't speak. The next day, my condition worsened and my cough didn't stop for a moment. Jeff carefully prepared food for me, measured my temperature, and even controlled the temperature in the car just right. I didn't say anything, but deep down, I was relieved. Maybe he can really fulfill the mission I entrusted to him. We drove into a city half covered in dust. The wind stopped, and time seemed to freeze. Jeff said he could take Dewey out to find supplies and let me rest in the car. When I woke up, I found no one in the car. Jeff and Dewey were not there. My heart was suddenly grabbed by a cold hand. I hadn't even changed my clothes before putting on a protective suit and struggling to get out of the RV. I searched along the ruins, my breathing getting heavier and my vision turning black. I shouted their names, my voice sounding like it was being swallowed by the wind. Until I saw Dewey's body behind a collapsed building. He lay there motionless with a mechanical arm caught in the trap. The power indicator light had gone out and the system had stopped responding. I walked over, knelt down, and gently hugged him in my arms. Sorry. I choked up and trembled as I pressed the master control termination button. Dewey's life came to an end. He was the earliest companion who accompanied me on my escape from the apocalypse, and I couldn't protect him well. At that moment, I almost collapsed. It's not because another machine is missing, but because I know my time is really running out. After finding Jeff, we fled overnight, but were followed by an unknown vehicle. I handed the steering wheel to Jeff and decided to go through an underground passage. Although Jeff warned that the RV was too high, I was stubborn. As expected, with a deafening impact, the top of the RV directly rubbed against the concrete arch. The solar panel shattered instantly, and a piece of the entire top was cut off. Jeff slammed on the brakes, and we were plunged into a brief moment of darkness and silence. The tracking car outside stopped in the distance for a while, as if confirming that we were unable to escape anymore, and then slowly turned around and left. Perhaps they felt that we were not worth wasting gasoline, or they had more important goals. The car eventually left, and we dodged a bullet, but I blamed myself for my misjudgment and got angry with Jeff. He stood quietly in the rain without saying a word. When we got back to the car, he told me that we were almost at the Golden Gate Bridge. That night, I talked about Goodill's past. I had heard in a supermarket that a little girl and her mother had been murdered, but I could only hide it. I said I was a coward, but that made me even more determined to protect Goodill. The next morning, I was awakened by a beam of light. The sunlight shone through the broken skylight, soft and warm, without any burning pain. I opened my eyes wide, almost thinking I was still in a dream. Jeff pointed out a butterfly to me. I reached out and found that I was not burned. Outside, the sunlight was no longer lethal. I saw flowers blooming and butterflies dancing. At that moment, I laughed out loud, as if I had returned to the past. We had a picnic on the grassland with the sun shining on us. It was the first time in over a decade that I sat in the sun. I told Jeff that I wished I could have more life, but I knew I was dying. He promised me that he would always take care of Goodill. I handed Goodill's favorite ball to Jeff and told him that this was the first step in building trust. We played briefly for a while, and suddenly I coughed up blood, staining my white suit red. I told Jeff that he had done enough. I held his hand, we hugged, and his eyes were full of sadness and human emotions. I returned to the car and lay down. Goudier snuggled up to me. I reached out with one hand and slowly stroked its back. The fur was warm and soft, and the touch reminded me of countless nights. In the ruins, in the storm, under the cold light of the underground laboratory, we relied on each other to get through those years. And Jeff, right beside us, silently packed the last luggage. He didn't say a word, but I could feel his emotions. Yes, I used to think that robots could never understand emotions, but at this moment, the sadness emanating from him is so real. He is learning how to say goodbye. I closed my eyes, then I left. I think they should be able to. Crossing the last ruin, crossing the collapsed world boundary, at the moment when the thick fog cleared, they saw the red bridge. On the other side of the bridge, there may be a few survivors standing. I don't know, but I am willing to believe in that place there are still people alive. There are still relatives waiting to be reunited, and everything I love deeply has finally been continued.